It is the Eurovision off-season, and while it's been a little bit more dramatic this year, we still have more time on our hands than we know what to do with. That means it's the perfect time to look back at every Eurovision winner this century and rank them all, because we're Euro fans, that's just what we do. The contest has changed a lot in that time, and in my opinion, so has the quality of the winners quite dramatically from year to year. For that reason, I'm going to apologize in advance when I inevitably trash someone's favorite, and feel free to send me abuse in the comments. Before we get into it, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and make sure you're following me and my editor Jay on Twitter. You can follow me on Instagram as well. You can also join our Discord server if you like. We are active all the time in there, and you can subscribe on Patreon to get videos a day early. Don't forget to like the video as well if you enjoy it at the end. Without further ado, I'm gonna get right to it because we have 24 different winners to get through today. I'm not gonna do them in year order. I'm gonna mix it up a bit so we have a mix of different ratings, a mix of different years all amongst each other. We're gonna start with a proper Eurovision classic, and that is Euphoria by Loreen. I'm not going to bother understating this, and I'm not going to beat around the bush. This song changed Eurovision forever. No entry in recent times, no entry this century has had a bigger impact on the contest than Euphoria did. At the time, this was one of the biggest commercial successes that the contest had produced in years, and it's easy to see why. Aside from the fact it's an absolute banger that raced to commercial success, so many Eurovision fans cite this song as one of the things that motivated them to get into Eurovision in the first place. In addition, this raised the bar for what was acceptable in the contest. The kinds of pop music that we see in Eurovision can be divided pretty much into two categories: before Euphoria and after Euphoria. That said, there is probably an entire video that I could make on the effect of that, so I'm just going to focus in on the song itself for the time being. In my opinion, this is an absolute banger that goes every bit as hard now as it did in 2012. This is timeless, and we're going to treasure this for many years to come. The staging wasn't super out there. They didn't do anything unusual. They kept it minimalist, but that was the right move for this song. It didn't need bells and whistles, and it didn't need anything fancy because Loreen carried the performance by herself. Having the focus just on her and one dancer meant that we weren't distracted, and we focused on the absolute banger that was playing out before our eyes. In addition, let's be honest, this song was much, much better than Tattoo. More on that later though. Given the importance of this in Eurovision history, there is nowhere else I can place it other than S tier, and that's where it's going. It is the strongest possible start, but as I said, a lot to get through, so we're going to move on fast to something not quite as strong. That comes in the form of Marie N from Latvia, who won in 2002 with her song I Wanna.
I wanna be the sunshine in your arms. I wanna be the light from shooting stars.
I've got to be honest, of all of the winners of the century, this is the one that I find the least memorable. Like, this is probably the only one of all of the last 25 years that I couldn't sing back to you if you asked me. Firstly, this has aged horribly. In general, I think the winner of 2002 and the years that preceded it really showed how bad a place the contest was in musically in the early 2000s. The bar had fallen really low, and in addition to that, we had all kinds of genres that just haven't aged well. As a result, you listen back to it now, and it's difficult to even make it through the show. To give this entry credit, it did mark a shift in how important staging was to the winning performance. This is the first winner of the decade that we can say truly owed some of its victory to how it was staged. At the time, the outfit changes were something new in Eurovision. We wouldn't bat an eyelid at it now, but in 2002, it was revolutionary. It worked well, and it was nicely executed. Ultimately, though, musically, we're never going to get past the fact that this was totally unimaginative. While the performance is memorable, it's memorable for every reason except for the actual song. Good job for doing something out of the box, at least by the standards of that time, and I'm glad it paid off, but this is never going to be a classic. Unfortunately, it's not for me at all, and that means it's going into D tier. To be honest, it was never going to go any higher than that. Next up, we're jumping forward in time again to 2016, to Jamala from Ukraine with her song 1944. There has been a lot of rewriting history with this song. While it's a beloved winner now that I think most Eurovision fans really appreciate, at the time, that was definitely not the case. I remember how many dislikes the performance got when it was uploaded to YouTube after the final. I remember the comments on Twitter and on YouTube and on all different social media platforms saying that Sergei Lazarev was robbed. I think a great many people, including myself, are now very glad that Jamala won instead of Sergei. But we have to remember that there has been a bit of rewriting of history here. year. Now, the message of 1944, of course, could not be more stark, with the subject matter being the deportation of the Crimean Tatars in 1944. What has made this age particularly well and in a particularly bleak way is the echoes that it has to the present. Thousands of Ukrainian children have been kidnapped from Ukraine and relocated into Russia to be raised as Russians by Russian parents. Sadly, that means that this song is more relevant now than it was then, and it was pretty current then too. In terms of the performance, I've always loved Jamala's voice, and I think she has a really unique tone. That big note in the bridge, paired with the visual of the tree in blue and yellow, is something that is going to stick with me for a long time. The first time I saw that, I was really blown away. I will say this isn't a song I listen to regularly, and it's not the kind of thing that you're going to stream over and over again, but it was never designed to be that kind of song. It's a performance that should be appreciated and something that is way better live than it ever was going to be in studio. I understand this is not going to be everyone's cup of tea. This is always going to be a little divisive musically on some level, although I think we can all get behind the message that this song has taken on. But with all that in mind, this really is unique. There is no other song like this in Eurovision, and there never has been. For that reason, it's one of the greatest winners of this century for me. With all those things considered, A tier is where it's going to go for me. Staying firmly in Ukraine, we're going to talk about 2004, where it was Ruslana with her song Wild Dances. Obviously, now we are used to Ukraine being a big boy in Eurovision circles. We all know the stories about the only country to have never failed to qualify from the semi-finals, the massive televote scores they receive year on year, and of course, the 2 wins that they've had since 2016. In 2004, this was only their second participation, and what a way it was to announce their presence. Much like Sertab the year before, and we'll talk more about her later, this song was ethnopop, and it came at the heart of the ethnopop golden age in Eurovision. This was a lot angrier than Every Way That I Can was, though. The big horns, the whips, the, wild dances made this the Europop equivalent of a punch in the face, and we all absolutely loved it. It won't surprise you to know that this was one of the betting odds favourites to win the contest before a note had even been sung, and that's where it deserved to be. Ruslana has been on quite a musical journey since then, but she's actually pretty intimately involved with the contest even now. I actually saw her perform Wild Dances live in 2018 in Lisbon, and you really don't appreciate the true power of this song until you've actually seen it with your own eyes. I will admit it was slightly surreal. She kept saying my energy for you in a slightly unsettling way over and over again between songs, and she was performing in front of a banner that said wild energy abilities are here, go renewable. But all of that weirdness doesn't change the fact that this is an absolute banger that has stood the test of time so far, and it set up Ukraine to be a future powerhouse in the contest. For that reason, it is going into B tier for me, but it came very, very close to being higher. Next up is 2007, and that means Maria Sarifovic from Serbia with her song Molitva. In the 90s and 2000s, after the breakup of the Soviet Union and Yugoslavia, it created some room for some new Eurovision tropes. Among those, the true giants were the Balkan ballad and ethnopop, which really had their day in the sun in the 2000s. We still see these genres every single year, at least one entry, usually more. As far as Balkan ballads go, Molitva is pretty much the defining entry of the genre. Firstly, it's the only one that won. Secondly, Maria Sarifovic's vocals are absolutely out of this world. I also have to give props to whoever did the staging, because they realized this was not a song that needed fireworks and lots going on. You could focus it in onto the singer and it would really work. It could stand on its own, and looking back, nobody else really deserved to win that year. This is a comfortable A tier and still comfortably the best entry that Serbia has ever sent. We're moving 1 year forward to 2008 now, which means we have to talk about the Russian entry Believe by Dima Bilan. I never wanted to think about this song again, but I guess for the purposes of this video, for the next minute or two, I will. This is not a valid criteria to judge a song on, but I just have to say it. I really dislike Dima Bilan. I think he comes across extremely arrogant, and he's the sort of person who is extremely convinced of his own genius. He projects a certain arrogance that really isn't warranted when you're singing a song written by a guy called Jim Beans. with a Z. That has actually become morbidly ironic in Russia since. I also have serious questions as to how he managed to get Timbaland, of all people, to produce this. In case it wasn't already obvious, I hate this song. I hate how it's staged, I hate the ice skater, I hate the fact that Dima Bilan rips his shirt dramatically open halfway through, and I hate the fact he changes the last line to "We believe in you."
We believe in you.
That's the moment at which my remote went through my TV screen. The only consolation that I get when I think of this is remembering that he tried to come back to the contest in 2011 and was beaten by a bunch of grannies. This is awful, it's terrible, it's F tier, and I hope I never hear from this man again. Next up is 2017, which means we're talking about Portugal's first and only winner, Salvador Sobral, with his song Amar pelos dois. There is a bit of a weird discourse around this song now because I constantly see Eurovision fans talking about how much they hate this and wish it had never won the contest. All of you need to reflect on your taste because this was absolutely stunning. I will need to give some context here because there are elements about this that do make me biased. Kiev was my first Eurovision in person, and so there was always going to be a special place in my heart for whatever song won that year. That said, believe me when I say, nobody in that room wanted anybody else to win. The way in which the audience connected to that when we saw it live was something I will never forget. This song has the most points in Eurovision history, and it has the most by a mile because nobody has ever run the table in the juries and the televote in the way that this did. Because of that, it's a total mystery to me that it just gets such disrespect, and I can't help but think that some of it is motivated by personal reasons and not by anything musical. And yes, I realize this makes me hypocritical given I was just talking about how much I dislike Dima Bilan. Yes, it's true that Salvador's speech after the contest was a little arrogant, but he's given a much more nuanced view on the contest ever since. In every interview about it, he gives it a pretty fair hearing. He's far more positive and far more open-minded, and I really don't think we can judge this all on one silly comment at an extremely pressured and sensitive time for Salvador in 2017. I love this and I will always defend this. Sometimes a song and a singer can create a mood, an emotion that needs nothing else. And in this entry, they created something really, really beautiful. It was rightly rewarded by the public with an incredible score that was matched in the juries. And for me, this is one of the greatest Eurovision winners ever. Unsurprisingly, for me, that means this is going to S tier, and you will struggle to find any Eurovision winner that is emotionally as important to me as this one. We are making our way back to the ethno-pop era now because it's 2003 and Sertab Erener from Turkey with her song Every Way That I Can.
Every way that I can, I'll give you all my love affair.
I'm gonna get it out of the way now that I'm not a huge fan of this song, but there is a much bigger picture here which I can appreciate far more. If there is one genre which is more associated with Eurovision than any other in the 2000s and in the 2010s, it's ethno-pop. Even in 2024, artists like Marina Sati are still bringing the same kind of energy, the same kind of vibes that Sertab brought all those years ago to the contest. This winning was a breakthrough moment, and it opened us up into a new era where we had 3 ethno-pop winners on the bounce. I don't know whether any of that would have been possible had Sertab not won that year. For some reason, even the UK tried to do ethno-pop in 2005, but as with most UK Eurovision entries at the time, it was a cheap knockoff and never had any prospect of doing well. Anyway, the point is, Sertab walked so Ruslana and Helena Paparizou could run. Every Way That I Can became the model for dozens of Eurovision entries, even up to today. Her presence as one of the interval acts of 2024 shows how much her impact is still felt and appreciated in the contest. I will always respect her for the change that she made with this song, but it's just never been for me. I've never managed to get into it and appreciate it in the way that I've managed to appreciate other songs from this time. That said, because of its impact on the contest, I am still going to put it in B tier and recognize its place in the Hall of Fame of the contest. Next is 2010, and that means Germany. Lena with her song Satellite.
Love, oh love, I gotta tell you how I feel about you, 'cause I
have gone on a bit of a journey with this song. There have been times when I've loved it, there was times when I hated it, and I've sort of ended up somewhere in the middle. That said, we need to talk about that fake accent because it's completely ridiculous. If it was a little bit, I really wouldn't mind, but this...
I did it just the other day. die.
Like, it reaches a point where you just say, I can't take this seriously. As for the song, it's pretty inoffensive pop. And that ultimately is its downfall for me. It's the kind of thing that gets listened to for a month, forgotten and never played again. And that is exactly what the arc was for this song. Sure, it was a big hit then, but there's been no kind of legacy from this whatsoever. It says everything that the entire cultural footprint of that year in Eurovision is taken on by this Moldovan man with a saxophone. As an aside, I actually went on an exchange trip to Germany the year after they won. Everyone hated this song. It had been played to death on the radio to the point that nobody ever wanted to hear it again. Though, to be fair, I kind of understand why they played it so much, given now the idea of Germany winning Eurovision is completely ridiculous. In any case, I'm gonna put it in C tier. It's not bad, but it's just not interesting, and it was never gonna have a lasting impression on the contest. Next, we're going to 2018, which was Israel, Netta with her song, Toy. It's confession time. I loved this song in 2018, and to be honest, I was massively rooting for it to win that year. I regret that now, partly for the obvious wider context that I wasn't fully engaged with at the time, and partly because this has aged like milk. This song was really unique, and it was presented in a way that caught people's eye, but I don't think I've listened to this song by choice for more than 5 years now. That's because it got really old really fast. The other problem I have with this now is I realized you can put the vocal line from Psychosocial by Slipknot directly over the top, and to be honest, it kind of improves it.
I did my time and I went out, so abusive.
Given everything, I'm gonna stick this one down into F tier. There's just so much baggage, and it's aged so badly that it really can't go anywhere else. Let's move on. Next up, we have Duncan Lawrence from the Netherlands, who won with his song Arcade in 2019. Mentioning this song in a video probably means a whole bunch of you are going to jump in the comments and tell me I look like Duncan Lawrence again. I'm ready for it. I will ban all of you. This song actually marked the 3rd year in a row that my favorite song at the time of the contest won the entire thing. And there is a photo of me somewhere taken at the moment of the victory of this song, which I'll put on screen if I can find it, which shows you just how invested I was in this. Much like 2017, this song kind of stood on the strength of the song and the singer alone. They didn't do anything complicated with the staging other than that little ball of light that descended from the ceiling. Also, much like 2017, by the time the final rolled around, this was a clear favourite to win, and win it did. Since then, it's had this weird journey to 1.6 billion streams and massive success on TikTok and in the US market as a result. Honestly, listening back to this now, it's actually aged pretty well, and it does still tug on the heartstrings that it tugged on back then. I think some of our opinions might have been jaded by the fact we've had to hear it so much because of its post-contest success. I will say though, this doesn't really stick out as an iconic winner of Eurovision. Sure, it was good, but it wasn't among the best. In addition to that, Duncan did damage his legacy a bit with the way he mishandled Mia and Dion in 2023. That mismanagement led to a disastrous semi-final exit and doubts to whether they'd even be able to sing the song. Between that and the fact that I just don't really have that much of a desire to go back to this, it's gonna have to go into B tier for today. It's back to ethnopop and back to the 2000s for 2005 next, which was Helena Paparizou from Greece with her song My Number One. I'm going to come out and say it up front. Helena Paparizou is the queen of ethnobops in Eurovision, and this song was that genre's crowning moment. The presence that this woman has on stage is ridiculous. By this point, in 2005, we were being buried in this genre of music. It was absolutely everywhere, and that meant you had to be truly special to rise above the crowd and win the whole thing. That's not to say it wasn't a bit silly. The improvised violin was a 10 out of 10 ridiculous gimmick, and I do not want to know where that middle string is going. And the dancers forming the number one on the floor is just so lovably naff. She simultaneously made the best ethnopop banger of her generation and made it ridiculously camp in the process, so it was perfect for Eurovision. I still hear this song on every Eurovision related night out that I go to, and there is a reason for that. People still love this every bit as much as they did 20 years ago. This is probably one of, if not the most beloved winner of the 2000s. For that reason, it's going into A tier, and that's where it belongs. Next, we're going to talk about Ukraine's most recent winner, Kalush Orchestra in 2022, with their song, Stefania. 2022 was a really unique year for Eurovision, and obviously a really awful year for Ukraine. We should say though, while the invasion did have an impact on the result, this would have been a contender anyway because it's a banger. It's easy to forget that this song didn't even win the Ukrainian national final, but to be honest, I kind of think the result worked out for the best. The song that won that show that was later disqualified had a totally different mood. It was a song that felt like it was about mourning, and at that time, the Ukrainian story didn't feel like it was about mourning, at least not to me. This song represented, sure, a wistfulness and a mourning of all the awful things that had happened, but there was a hope to it. It had a certain joy and resistance, and I think that was the message that people needed to hear at that time. It suited the mood of Europe and the mood of Ukrainians at that point really perfectly. As a result, it connected to the European public in a way that no song ever has at Eurovision, and that televote score probably never going to be beaten. It is not one of the most memorable winners for me personally of recent times, but given its significance, it's going into B tier for me, and it's about as close as you can get to A tier without making it across the boundary. Next, we're talking about 2015, and that means Sweden. Måns Zelmerlöw with his song, Heroes.
We are the heroes of our time. Heroes.
I've said before that I think Måns gets too much hate, and I'm going to stand by it here. This is not a bad song. It was staged in a way that was really innovative, and I feel like we've maybe been distorted by the fact that we've had several similar performances since then. At the same time, we can be honest and say that no musical boundaries were pushed here in any way. This was very much the cookie-cutter Swedish pop formula, coming good and producing a winner. As a result, the only legacy this has left is Måns finding a way to turn up to every single contest, except, oddly, this year in Malmö. Then again, this year they were so thin on the ground that their interval act ended up being Alcaraz, so I'm not exactly sure they were spoiled for choice. There can hardly have been that much enthusiasm to be part of whatever mess this year's contest was. Sadly, Heroes just didn't have any of the qualities that would make a winning song memorable. It represented nothing new musically, and like I said, represented a certain cookie-cutter, know it's gonna do well style of pop that people just don't really engage with in the long run. I will give Måns one bonus here, which is that he stopped Polina Gagarina from winning the contest. She's now best known for being a pro-Putin shill who makes appearances at his rallies. And her so-called peace ballad, A Million Voices, ages worse and becomes more offensive with every passing year. For that reason, Måns, I'm putting you into B tier, so thank you for saving us from that. Next up is 2013, when the contest was won by Emily de Forest from Denmark with her song Only Teardrops.
Tell me how many times can we win and lose? How many times can we break the rules?
I have a bit of a weird emotional relationship with this song now that Emily de Forest randomly showed up at the UMK press day this year and performed this for us acoustic. Despite the emotional attachment, this should still not have won the contest. Norway and Ukraine from that year are both in my top 5 favourite Eurovision songs of all time, and the fact that neither of them were a winner still hurts. That said, this was a heavy favourite for a winner. It was nicely put together, it was a memorable song, and it was staged appropriately. In addition, given how bad things have been in the contest for Denmark ever since, with the possible exception of Rasmussen, I kind of think the Danish fans deserved this, so I'm gonna let you have this one. This song is never gonna be considered among the classics in Eurovision, but there is nothing wrong with it. It's strong enough, and it doesn't give me any negative feelings, which I guess is kind of condemnation by faint praise, but at the same time, for that reason, it goes into the same category as Heroes. It's a B tier for Emily de Forest on this occasion. Next, we're gonna talk about 2021, and that means Italy. Måneskin with their song Zitti e Buoni.
Sono fuori di testa, ma diverso da loro.
I'm going to put it out there right now. I never really got on board with the Måneskin hype. Don't get me wrong. I like them as a band and I like this song very much. I just feel like there's something that others saw in this that I didn't see because I didn't have it down as a winner until the night of the final. And I wouldn't have seen their rise to global fame since either. At the same time, these things happen for a reason. And there are two things that cannot be disputed. Firstly, the fact that yes, they did deserve to win Eurovision. Secondly, you can't argue with the fact that they became superstars afterwards. The difference that Måneskin made to the credibility of Eurovision cannot be understated. Out of every winner this century, nobody has come close to the kind of commercial success that they have seen in the few years since. Even now, they're still selling out arenas on both sides of the Atlantic. It's a bit of a shame that they've shed any kind of Eurovision-related aura, but given the audience they have, I think that's completely understandable, and we can't really hold a grudge against them for that. Artists outgrowing the contest is a sign that the contest is succeeding. I wish this kind of thing would happen every year. It shows that the contest is functioning in the way that it should, which is providing a platform to artists to supercharge their careers. If there was a Måneskin-like launch of a career from Eurovision every single year, can you imagine the quality of artists we'd be getting in the contest? Everyone would want to participate. Given everything that's happened since, I'm going to put this in A tier. What kept it out of S tier for me was just that personally for me, I'm not quite as on board the hype train as everyone else was, but it deserves a deep respect and is definitely one of the biggest legacies that the contest has left in recent years. Moving forward 2 years to potentially another controversial opinion, 2023 was won by Loreen again with her song Tattoo for Sweden.
I don't care about the pain. I want the fire and your rain. Just take it close and tell you you're the moon.
I have calmed down a lot about the 2023 results since it happens, and it doesn't hurt anything like it did at the time. I'm not going to go into the Loreen and Carrier discourse again in this video because it's been done to death already. That said, we should face up to the fact that while the staging for this song was really innovative, the song itself was not at all. At best, this was Loreen's third best attempt at Eurovision, behind Euphoria and behind Statements as well. Tattoo is not a bad song, but it is nowhere near as good as some people seem to think it is. Although I am over the result mostly, it's always going to leave a bit of a sour taste that the juries went so heavily for this song when there were plenty of deserving candidates in that final who deserved a lot more points than they got. It felt like the house making sure that the house would win. Loreen is a Eurovision legend, and the commercial success of Tattoo has certainly been a good thing for the contest. I respect her, I respect the song, and I respect what she's done for the contest. But on some level, I am always going to have an issue with the way in which this won Eurovision. For that reason, and the fact that this is just not close to Euphoria in any way, I'm going to put it into C tier. Next, we're going back to 2009 and Alexander Rybak from Norway with his song Fairy Tale.
I'm in love with a fairy tale.
This song blew all the records away in 2009 when it participated, and I really clearly remember the sense of total inevitability around the contest that year. It was so obvious that he was going to win the whole thing, and as we watched 12 after 12 come in, it was pretty much met with a shrug. I was happy for him and I liked the song. It was just so obvious he was going to win, it wasn't very exciting. Like I say, the song is fine and it really did stick in the public imagination better than most songs from that era. It now has 88 million views on the official Eurovision YouTube channel, which is testament to the legacy that it has left. That said, I feel nothing when I listen to this. It's catchy and he's likable and he has this kind of boyish charm, which I guess was their intention, but I just cannot bring myself to feel any kind of strong emotional connection to this now. Maybe this is just bias against obvious favorites winning, which is a bias I definitely have, but that's just how I feel about it. I'm going to put this in C tier as a result. It definitely deserved to win that year and the performance was really well done, but I can't rank something any higher than this if it just brings about no significant emotions in me whatsoever. Time for the oldest entry in this video, which is the winner in 2000. That was Denmark's Olsen brothers with the song Fly on the Wings of Love.
Fly on the wings of love. Fly, baby, fly.
Watching songs from the early 2000s in Eurovision is such a whiplash for me now because the way they stage them is so radically different. It's like they flicked a switch somewhere around 2003 and 2004 and suddenly everyone realized all at once that you can't just stand on stage and sing your song anymore. That is, unless you're Salvador Sobral. This performance makes me really thankful for how much the contest has evolved in the last 20 years, and not in a good way, because this feels so dated now, and to be honest, I don't think it's even a particularly good song. We can forgive the classic key change in the final chorus because basically every Eurovision song was doing that at the time, but there is also one of the Olsen brothers badly pretending to play guitar when there was no guitar audible.
In the summer night, when the moon shines bright.
As well as the vocoder in the bridge that just feels so odd now.
Fly, baby, fly.
Look, the song is nice enough. They sound pretty good. It's not to my taste, but they perform it well. The problem is, this has always been forgettable and it hasn't aged well at all. I'll throw in a few bonus points for the fact it spawned a much more successful and much more fondly remembered dance remix.
Fly on the wings of love.
But it can't go higher than C tier for me, and even then, I feel like I'm being a little bit generous. Moving forward a year, it's Estonia. In 2001, Dave Benton, Tanel Padar, and 2XL with the song Everybody.
Come on, everybody, and sing along and feel the power of a song. Come on, everybody, and feel the spark that always lives within our hearts.
This song has basically every single problem that the Olsen brothers had in 2000. Arguably, it was even more dated, and I'm pretty sure it was also dated in 2001. The lyrics are essentially completely meaningless, and the staging essentially consists of some guys just kind of vibing. With all of that in mind, I really can't explain why I absolutely love this. Maybe I'm overanalyzing this, but it just feels to me that this song, on some level, has a bit more self-awareness than we give it credit for. Yes, it's dated and naff and ridiculous and it's cliche, but they didn't take it too seriously and neither should we. I am seriously considering embarking on another campaign to get this into the ESC 250 at the end of this year. I did try it in 2020, but I only got to 458th, so I'm going to need a little bit more help this time. Anyway, point is, I should rank this low. For every single professional reason, it should not be ranked highly, but I just love it. I absolutely love it, and for that reason, I'm putting it into A tier. You can fight me about this if you want, I don't care. From there, we're moving on to Conchita Wurst from Austria, who won in 2014 with Rise Like a Phoenix. I feel like it's worth mentioning that nobody thought this was going to win the contest until the actual week of the shows. It was nowhere in the odds before flying up as soon as we saw it live. This performance was hugely significant in a whole range of ways. It's easily the best Bond theme in the recent history of the contest, and Conchita after this became one of the most instantly recognizable Eurovision winners going. Of all the winners we're talking about in this video, Conchita sticks in the public imagination more than most. I will freely hold my hands up and say, just like everyone else, I massively underestimated this until the shows came around. And to be honest, I didn't really like it all that much in the studio version either. Seeing the way this came to life on stage though, completely changed how I felt about it and completely changed how everyone else felt as well. This is objectively one of the most iconic winners of the modern era. That said, when it comes to the impact it had on the contest in the long run, it doesn't have the same kind of transformative effect that we saw from Euphoria a couple of years before. And like I said, while it's amazing live, the studio version is just not something I'm ever going to listen to. For that reason, it can't quite get into S tier, but it definitely deserves to go into A. Next up is 2006, Finland, Lordi with their song Hard Rock Hallelujah.
Rock and roll angels, bring that hard rock, hallelujah. Demons and angels, only one have a right.
Every goth has its day, and in 2006, Finland was that goth. This song was only 12th in the odds before Eurovision, and nothing remotely similar had come close to winning before. So of course it made perfect sense that they not only won the contest, but got the most points any song had ever received at the time. What was really the icing on the cake was the fact that Finland was terrible at the contest before this. They had never finished in the top 5 and had been participating since 1961. So to be honest, it's no surprise that the commentators completely lost it when they received their first 12 points of the evening.
12 points goes to Finland!
This song hit me personally at the perfect time because 2006 to 2008 was my first metal era. My brother gave me a pirated copy of a Nightwish album and I got into bands like Slayer and Slipknot and Metallica from Guitar Hero 3. So this was right up my street.
You are right up my street.
In 2008, I got into Eurovision, looked back a couple of years and found this, and I was in love straight away. By the way, you get bonus points if you listen to the album version of this song, which adds a creepy organ in the intro, which just makes it 100 times better. In my opinion, this is aged better than any other Eurovision song of this time period. More than anything else, that speaks to just how good a song it is, because it still feels fresh almost 20 years later. It's things like this, the songs that catch you completely off guard, that turn the conventional wisdom of how to win Eurovision upside down, that you really remember fondly. I love this for the same reasons I love Cha 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 in 2023, and unlike Carrier, this got the ending it deserved. This is the best winner of the 2000s in my view, and it's going straight into S tier, no questions asked. From that to this, 2011, Azerbaijan, Elle and Nikki with their song Running Scared.
I'm running, I'm scared tonight. I'm running, I'm scared to fly.
This is the worst song to ever win the Eurovision Song Contest. By a considerable distance. This is the most schmaltz-ridden, the most cliche, the most trite ballad you could possibly have in the contest. It has precisely nothing of merit in any area whatsoever, from the songwriting to the live performance to the staging or lack thereof. Okay, maybe that was a little harsh. They sung it fine, but that was all it had going for it. I seriously cannot believe this song won Eurovision. Even now, it makes no sense to me. There are hundreds of songs like this. Dozens of them are in Eurovision, and none of them get close. They die in the semi-finals where they belong. That is what would happen to this if it was entered into the contest today. I am going to either call a spade or put the tinfoil hat on here, and I am going to call a big red flag on this. We have hard evidence of Azerbaijan in this period attempting to cheat, attempting to rig the televote in the contest. You're seriously telling me that this song got the equivalent of 223 points from the public? I don't buy it. It's no coincidence that after Azerbaijan was caught cheating and after the EBU investigated, suddenly they started doing a lot worse. I have serious doubts about whether this song won the contest legitimately, and if I finished in second or third that year, I would feel robbed. Are you seriously going to tell me that it's a coincidence so many countries with less than 5 million people gave this song 8, 10, or 12? Those are the markets that you can most easily influence by running a televote rigging operation. Big thanks to Eurobruno on Twitter for crunching the numbers for me on this one. Here is a graph that shows what I mean. If I could create a tier below F tier, that's where this song would go. Wait, hang on, no, I can't do that. Z tier. This song is going in Z tier. That's where it belongs. Everyone who voted for this should be arrested and interrogated. Incidentally, that's exactly what Azerbaijan did for people who voted for Armenia in 2009. We're going to finish up with 2024. Switzerland, Nemo, The Code. Code has the same jury-heavy feel to its points that Tattoo had in 2023, but as I previously said in my post-Eurovision review, that score felt pretty justified given the criteria the songs were being judged against. And we cannot disregard the level of technical brilliance that this performance had in basically every aspect. I will say, for full transparency, the first time I heard this song, I did not think it was a potential winner. The thing that changed my mind was seeing it live on Swiss TV for the first time. This is the kind of song that lives or dies based on the live performance, and Nemo's live performance was absolutely stunning. The vocals were perfect, the staging was perfect, the versatility was unmatched, and the way in which this song so effortlessly blended so many genres made it a hugely deserving winner. There are so many ways in which this could have gone wrong, and it takes genuine mastery to pull it all together and make it into something that has mass appeal. I also really don't think we can undersell the level of physical fitness you have to do to execute this performance, to even keep your balance on that massive spinning top, let alone while singing as well as Nemo does. We don't know yet what the legacy of this song will be in Eurovision. I think we're going to see some amazing things in their career to come though. Maybe someday this song will be born out to have an incredible legacy in Eurovision, and that could see it go into a higher tier. For now, it's going into A tier. With Nemo, who knows what the future holds. But to be honest, I think we've only seen the tip of the iceberg. With that, that is all of the winners of the 2000s, and you can see the full tier list on screen now. You can also do this yourself, and the link will be in the description. I'm sure I will have annoyed plenty of you with my opinions here, and please do share them in the comments because I love to read them. And if you share your thoughts, I will try to read as many as I can. For now, thank you so much for watching, as always, and stay tuned because the next video on this channel will be the first part of this year's iceberg. I can't wait to share that with you in 2 weeks, but for now, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, and take care.